So, DJI has officially released the long-anticipated DJI Avata 2. I've been flying this thing for the past 2 months or so, and in this video I'm going to be covering the top 10 most important features on this new drone. I'll talk about the things I love, the things I don't love, and answer the most important question, which is whether or not you should buy it. Let's do it. So it's been about a year and a half since DJI released the first version of this product, the DJI Avata, and people were wondering if and when they would release a new one, and we finally have it. Here's a little bit of a side-by-side comparison. Not only did they release the drone, but they also released a new pair of goggles, a new motion controller, and a new normal FPV controller. And the first thing that I want to talk about with this new drone is that it finally has O4 transmission technology. This essentially just means you're going to get much better range out of this drone, and if there are obstacles like walls or trees in between you and the drone, you're going to have much better connection. On paper, the original Avata has a range of 10 kilometers and the new one has a range of 13. Realistically though, you're just not going to be able to take advantage of most of that range due to battery limitations. Basically on every single one of my FPV drones, that's the case. Because although technically you might be able to make it out that far, then you have to come back. Something is very wrong about your FPV flying if you're doing consistent one-way flights. I actually have done some pretty surprising long-range flights with this drone that I'll be releasing on this channel shortly, so if you do want to see those in the coming weeks, just make sure you're subscribed. And this last point segues nicely into the next thing that I want to talk about, which is battery life. This drone is rated at 23 minutes compared to the original Avata, which had 18. This might not sound like a lot if you're used to flying regular drones, but for FPV, it is a ton. Realistically, you're never going to get that on-paper battery time because when they test that, they're literally just hovering in a windless environment, and when you're actually filming stuff, you're moving around. A lot of times it's outside, so you get a lot less than that. So my typical formula for finding battery times for drones is you divide by 2 and add 6, and that's pretty much true for this as well. This drone is a small Cinewhoop style drone, so for most people that fly this drone, it's going to be pretty chill and relaxed. And when I've done flights like that, I get anywhere from like 13 to 16 minutes on each battery. But if you're absolutely ripping this thing doing freestyle or long range, you can expect anywhere between 8 and 12 minutes. That being said, I would highly recommend getting the Fly More combo that comes with 3 batteries. It comes in this really cool charging case, so you can just super easily charge everything up and swap batteries on the go. This battery bank is also super nice because it's actually an out charger as well. So let's say you're somewhere and you forget to charge one of your components, or you're just running low on the battery of your controller or something, you can use this port right here, and that doubles as an out charger, so you can just plug that in there, plug this into your controller, and just charge that. The next thing that I want to talk about, which is arguably the most important upgrade as far as I'm concerned, and that is the video quality. On paper, there's not a huge upgrade as far as resolution goes, as both Avatas, the original and this one, shoot 4K 60. However, there's way more to video quality than just resolution, and the image as a whole is way better on this new upgraded version. Honestly, the first Avata just didn't really do it for me video-wise, so when I would fly that, I actually use it a ton for indoor fly-throughs. I would just mount a GoPro on top. So I just would stick this sticky onto each one of my batteries and then just fly that way. And the drone still handled relatively well, and I actually really enjoyed flying it, even over some of my sub 250 gram FPV setups, because the battery life was way better and it just felt a lot more stable when there was any wind involved. But with this new version, I'd be way more inclined to just use the internal camera. For starters, the sensor is way bigger. It's a 1 by 1.3 inch sensor compared to the old 1 by 1.7 inch sensor. And that helps out with a ton of things. The first one being it allows you to capture more light, so you're gonna have better performance in low light. And then another thing that's awesome is similar to the DJI Mini 4 Pro, you can now adjust the sharpness and noise reduction right on the drone while you're shooting. This is a huge deal for me because usually when you're shooting on things with small sensors like GoPros or any action camera or any drone with a small sensor, you get this like weird over sharpened look that you can kind of just tell it's shot on a small sensor. But if you bring the sharpness down, you get a little bit more of a smoother picture. On top of that, now the 4K 60 supports HDR video recording, which just allows you to really preserve more information in your highlights and shadows, getting you a more even picture when you're shooting. On top of that, it finally supports D-Log-M for way better color grading in post. The last one had a color profile called D-Cinelike, which is kinda like log. It sort of looks like log, but it's not true log, and it just wasn't that great for color grading. But this is a massive upgrade now. And it just allows you to pull all of the information and the color and the highlights and the shadows out of your footage. By the way, all these color grades that I'm doing to the footage are colored with my drone LUT pack. If you're someone to get that cinematic feel to your footage, these LUTs are perfect for you. And I know a lot of people sell LUTs, and honestly, before I developed these for myself, my problem with a lot of people that sold them was they would sell these packs of like 80 LUTs, which would only make me more confused as to how to do it and which one to pick. So over the years, I built up just 4 LUTs that I've used literally to color grade every single clip that I post here on Instagram, wherever. Link is down in the description below if you do want to check those out. I don't have a sponsor for today's video, so if you just want to support the channel and also get something that can really help you out with your color grading, it would mean a ton if you went and checked those out. All right, so the next thing that I want to talk about is stabilization, which in short, again, like a lot of the other features, is definitely upgraded. I'm someone who, whenever I'm shooting FPV, I always use post-processing stabilization software, but the internal stabilization on this drone is really solid, and a lot of the times when I was out filming, just to kind of remove an extra step afterwards, I would just use the internal stabilization because it actually looks really good. But for more technical flights and kind of like long range stuff where I knew I would want that perfect cinematic smooth look, you can just turn off EIS, shoot on wide mode, and then stabilize with a software called GyroFlow. All right, so there's 2 more things that I want to talk about as far as like the camera and filming. One being that if you're a traditional FPV pilot who's used to shooting with GoPros or other action cameras on top of your drones, it's going to be a bit weird going to this because the feed that you're seeing through your goggles is actually like the final clip. Because if you want the best footage possible, you're likely going to be using manual settings, and ideally we'll shoot at a lower shutter speed to get that cinematic motion blur. But when you do this, that cinematic motion blur that you love to see in the final clip is now like actually in your goggles. So it's a little bit distracting, and there's slight bit delay just because the frame rate is lower. Like if you're making a sharp corner, it's gonna be blurry for like a hot second just because the shutter speed is like actually at a proper rate. One good thing about it is it's cinematic AF when you're flying, and then also you can just genuinely see exactly what the footage is gonna look like. But for someone like me who's used to flying on an O3 air unit where everything is just crisp and sharp, it's gonna just be something you have to get used to. But on a positive note, when you have a GoPro on top, you press record and you just go off and do the entire flight. But here you can just easily start and stop recording, which is super nice, especially on those longer flights where you're just getting a bunch of different individual clips. And then if the lighting conditions change, you can just press the GPS position hold button, pause for a second, change the settings, and then just continue flying. The next thing I want to talk about are the noise levels. The original DJI Avata was the loudest drone ever, even louder than a ton of my bigger drones. The props are just super close together and also have this 5-prop design, so it was just screaming and screeching the entire time it was in the air. Compared to the new one, which is a little bit more spread out as far as the total body, and it also just has 3 blades. So this one's way quieter. When I was doing hotel fly-throughs with the original Avata, especially with a GoPro on top, that thing was an absolute menace. And on a similar note, just because the props are a little bit wider compared to these that are just closer together and actually underneath the body of the drone, it feels a lot more stable in flight. This allows you to be a lot more precise on your dives and turns and just leads to a better overall flight experience. Obviously, this drone is designed for a little bit more close range, weaving through obstacles type flight, but it actually handles pretty well long range too. One thing that's happened to me several times though is kind of this weird glitch that I actually experienced on the original Avata as well, which is if you're like, let's say you're diving down a mountain and you have to make a really abrupt turn or something, you make the turn, sometimes the drone gets confused for a second and like shoots off in a weird direction. So I hope that's just a software bug and is something that will definitely be fixed later on. It's only happened to me a few times, but I figured it was just something that was worth mentioning. This drone now has an upgraded visual positioning system as well, with an additional rear-facing sensor on top of the downward-facing sensor that the first version already had. This just makes it a lot more stable when you're hovering or taking off and landing, just because it has a lot more information about the environment that it's in. Next thing I want to cover is this new motion controller. Because a good chunk of people who bought the original Avata didn't even mess around with this normal FPV controller and just flew with the motion controller. Which, to be honest, I really didn't think that I would actually like until I actually tried it, and it was super, super fun and just a completely different way to interface with FPV. And you can actually fly some super tight lines and hit small gaps with this thing. One of the biggest complaints though was the fact that you couldn't do any of those classic acrobatic FPV moves that really define FPV. Flips, rolls, stuff like that. But now DJI has developed a mode called Easy Acro that makes it super, super simple. Literally with one tap of a button, you can do flips, rolls, 180-degree drift, and it just makes flying with this way more fun. Next up, let's talk about, these new goggles. Right off the bat, probably the most talked about and anticipated feature was these frontward facing cameras up here. Basically, these allow you to just tap the side of the goggles twice, just like that, and the goggles instantly display the view in front of you. The idea behind it was you could just get a better sense of your surroundings and also do things like taking off and landing without taking the goggles off at all. When you do this, you can actually set up picture-in-picture mode, where basically like the view that the drone is filming goes up to the corner so you can see what you're filming and the world around you as well. I think this actually is gonna help a lot of people with kind of motion sickness issues, because I know there is a lot of people that deal with that when they fly FPV. To be honest, I didn't really find myself using it too much.
Mainly because the focal length is super narrow, so I'd rather just take the goggles off and then put them back on.
The next thing you'll notice about the goggles is they have this nubby thing in the front, and that's actually where the strap is connected, and it connects in the back to this adjustable strap / battery bank. I actually love this design. It just feels like it fits a lot better. It's not gonna fall down and just is a lot more comfortable in my opinion. The battery also lasts up to 3 hours just because they have all this extra space back here, which is amazing. And then another thing that's awesome is you can actually simultaneously charge the goggles while you're flying. So you can have basically unlimited goggle use. Similar to the drone itself, these now have O4 technology as well for better range and better connection through obstacles. Another upgrade to this drone is the internal storage space. So the first Avata only had 20 gigabytes of internal storage space. This one now has 46. Sometimes it just happens, you just forget memory cards, and it's super nice knowing that there's just some internal memory in there so you can get the shoot done. It happens to the best of us, but with this much internal space, you just know you're good. I was honestly pretty bummed when the DJI Mini 4 Pro came out with only 2 gigabytes of internal space, so I'm glad to see that DJI is putting more on their newer drones. So in conclusion, who is this drone for? Who is it not for? And most importantly, should you buy it? In the past, the original Avata was my #1 recommendation for beginners. It's just super simple to set up, it's really durable, and packed with a ton of features. But now, this guy is 100% taking the top spot. If you're looking for your first ever FPV drone, this is your drone right here. If you already own a Generation 1 Avata and you need to take out a second mortgage on your house to afford the new one, I would probably recommend just sticking with the original one because it is a really solid piece of technology. But if you do have the money to spare, it's a huge upgrade. And even if you are a more advanced pilot, the bigger sensor, supporting D-Log-M, sharpness adjustment, and just overall flying experience, I think you're gonna be super happy with this drone. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, for most of the fly-through stuff that I do, I just take a DJI Avata, strap a GoPro on top, and film with that. And from now on, I will definitely be switching to this one. The video quality isn't quite as good as GoPro, so I'll probably be mounting a GoPro on top, but just because this drone is a little bit wider, has better battery life, has better signal, this is definitely gonna be the move. And guys, if you are planning on picking one of these drones up, it would mean the world to me if you use the affiliate link down below. Like I said earlier in this video, I don't have a sponsor set up, so that is just a really good way to support the channel and just help me make more videos like this. Anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.